right, let's dive into something you use every day, um, but might not have mastered yet. Small talk. Those casual conversations, they can actually make a big difference.
It's funny how much we tend to underestimate small talk. It's like it's actually super important. It's a foundation for building connections, smoothing those awkward moments, even opening doors to opportunities you didn't see coming.
Exactly. And, while it seems effortless for some, I think a lot of people find small talk kind of intimidating. But the good news is there are things you can try to make it, well, less awkward, a lot more rewarding too.
Totally. One of the first things to realize is that small talk isn't about like some perfectly rehearsed speech. It's more about just creating a comfortable atmosphere and finding a little spark, a connection.
Okay, so how do we create that comfortable atmosphere? I've always wondered why some topics seem to work like anywhere, like talking about the weather. I mean, it's so basic. Is there something more to it?
There's this really interesting psychological thing going on there, this shared experience thing. When you talk about the weather with someone, you're instantly acknowledging something you both experience, right? It's common ground. And that helps ease that social anxiety a bit.
So it's not just making conversation, it's about subtly making a connection. That makes sense.
Mm.
Now, besides the weather, what other topics tend to work well, no matter where you are?
Think about things most people have in common. Work or studies are great starting points. You can learn about their day-to-day, what they're passionate about, and maybe you even find you have some shared interests. And don't underestimate hobbies. People light up when they talk about something they love, whether it's collecting stamps or running marathons.
You can really see their energy change.
Yeah,
And I guess travel fits in there too. Sharing stories about places you've been or want to go can create a real connection.
for sure. And then there's the news, current events. While it's best to stay away from anything too controversial and light small talk, just a quick observation about a local event or a feel-good story, that can create a sense of like shared reality.
Okay, so we've got our list of good topics, but let's get practical. What are some specific phrases we can try to actually, get the conversation flowing? Like,
Yeah.
say you're at a coffee shop waiting in line. How do you break the ice without feeling awkward?
Instead of just like commenting on the weather in general, try finding a specific detail to talk about. You could say something like, that coffee smells incredible. Have you tried their new latte? It's positive, it's relevant to where you are, and it kind of invites the other person to share their experience.
I like that. It feels genuine and specific, not just like a generic conversation starter. And speaking of keeping the conversation flowing, we were talking earlier about the importance of asking open-ended questions. Can you tell me more about that?
Sure. Think about it like this. If you ask someone, did you have a good weekend? You're practically setting them up for a yes or no answer. But if you ask, what did you do over the weekend? You're encouraging them to tell you more,
Mhm.
share a little bit about themselves.
So it's about giving them the space to talk and showing you're actually interested in what they have to say.
Exactly. And when you do that, you shift things from just exchanging words to actually engaging with the other person.
And that brings us to what might be the most important skill of all, active listening. It's more than just nodding your head and pretending to pay attention.
Oh, absolutely. Active listening is about showing that you're really taking in what the other person's saying. You can do this with little verbal cues like, oh, really? That's interesting, or tell me more. These encourage the speaker to keep going and show that you're following along.
It's like giving them little nudges to keep sharing their story. And of course, body language is huge too. Making eye contact, nodding naturally, using facial expressions that match what they're saying. All of that signals that you're present and engaged.
And here's a pro tip, paraphrasing. When you rephrase what someone said, it shows you've been paying attention. And it makes sure you're both on the same page. For example, if someone says, I just started learning to play guitar, you can say, wow, that's cool. What kind of music are you learning to play?
It shows you're not just waiting for your turn to talk, but actually trying to understand their experience. But let's be real, even with the best intentions, sometimes conversations they hit a snag. What about those awkward silences that seem to come out of nowhere? What do we do when those hit?
Yeah, those awkward silences, they happen to everyone, right? They're just part of being human. But there are ways to handle them, ways to make them a little less, well, awkward. One thing you can do is smoothly change the topic. You could say something like, by the way, seen any good movies lately? Or that reminds me of something I read the other day. It's like you're building a little bridge to a new topic, without making it feel too sudden.
It's like subtly redirecting the conversation. And if you're drawing a blank on a new topic, is it all right to just kind of steer the conversation back to the other person?
Totally. Most people actually really enjoy talking about themselves, so inviting them to elaborate on something they've already mentioned. That's a solid strategy. You could ask them to tell you more about their work, their hobbies, or what they're doing this weekend.
Okay, so we've covered some general tips for small talk, but what about those situations where the stakes feel a little higher, like at a networking event?
Hmm.
Any advice for breaking the ice when you're surrounded by people you don't know?
Networking events, yeah. Those can definitely be intimidating. But remember, everyone's there to connect, right? You could approach someone who's standing alone and just say, "Hi, I don't think we've met. Are you enjoying the event?" It's friendly, not pushy, and gives them a chance to share their experience.
That's a great opening. And say they respond positively and mention they're new to the group. How do you keep the conversation going from there?
You can use those open-ended questions we were talking about. Try something like, "What brings you to this group?" Or "What kind of work are you involved in?" Those questions encourage them to open up a bit, and you might even find some unexpected common ground.
Right, and that could lead to a real connection, maybe even a collaboration later on. It's amazing how these seemingly insignificant small talk moments can sometimes have a ripple effect. Now, let's shift to a more casual scene. Imagine you're at a friend's party and you end up chatting with someone you don't really know. What are some good ways to start a conversation in that kind of setting?
Parties are definitely more relaxed, so you can go for lighter topics. Music is always a good one. You could comment on the song that's playing, something like, "I love this song. Do you know who it's by?" Or "Have you heard this band before?"
Music is such a connector. It often reveals shared tastes and can lead to discussions about concerts, favorite albums, even just musical memories. But let's face it, sometimes even at casual get-togethers, we run into those awkward silences. Any tips for dealing with those gracefully?
We talked about smooth topic transitions, but in a casual setting, sometimes a little humor can help break the ice. You could say something lighthearted like, "Well, this is certainly testing our patience, isn't it?"
Yeah, a little self-deprecating humor can definitely lighten the mood. But you're right, it's always important to be mindful of your audience and the overall vibe. Okay, let's move on to something particularly relevant these days. Cultural considerations. With our increasingly interconnected world, it's more and more important to be aware of how small talk norms can differ across cultures.
That's so true. What might be seen as polite and engaging in one culture could be considered intrusive or even offensive in another. For example, in some cultures, it's perfectly fine to ask about someone's family or personal life right away, but in others, those topics are way too personal for early conversations.
So how do we navigate these cultural nuances? It seems like a potential minefield.
The key is awareness and being able to adapt. It's helpful to do a little research if you can, to get familiar with the customs of the culture you'll be interacting with. But even without a ton of research, you can start with more general topics and watch the other person's cues to get a sense of what's appropriate.
So paying attention to their body language, their tone, the level of detail they're comfortable sharing, all of that can give us clues.
Right. Are they engaging? Are they hesitant? Those nonverbal cues can tell you a lot. And if you're ever unsure, it's always better to be cautious. Start with neutral topics, watch how they respond, and adjust your approach based on that.
It sounds like the takeaway here is that successful small talk isn't about sticking to a script. It's about being present, adapting to the situation, and being genuinely interested in the other person.
Exactly. And with a little practice, you can actually turn those potentially awkward small talk moments into opportunities for genuine connection.
So what are some specific things our listeners can try to boost their small talk confidence and actually make those connections happen?
Well, one thing you can try is like having a few go-to conversation starters in your back pocket, like think of them as your trusty icebreakers. Having a few ready can really help with that initial anxiety and make you feel more prepared.
That's a great idea. I definitely get flustered sometimes, so having a few phrases ready to go would be huge. And once you've broken the ice, what's the best way to keep the conversation going in a good direction?
Focus on common ground. It's amazing how quickly things can click when you find those shared interests or experiences. Listen for those little hints. A comment about a book they're reading, a place they've been, a food they love. Those little things can be real connection points.
It's like you're suddenly speaking the same language.
Right.
And I've noticed that a well-placed compliment can really help too, but I'm always a little afraid to go there. Any advice for making sure compliments come across as genuine, not weird?
The key is to be specific and real. Instead of just saying, you look nice, try something like, that color's really flattering on you, or I love your earrings, they're so unique. People can tell when a compliment is, well, genuine.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's about noticing a detail and really expressing your appreciation for it. Okay, so we've talked about conversation starters, finding common ground, and compliments. What other tips can we give our listeners?
Pay attention to your body language. Stand up straight, make eye contact, and try not to cross your arms, which can make you seem closed off. Projecting confidence and openness with your posture can actually make you seem more approachable.
It's true. So much of communication is nonverbal, right? We could be saying all the right things, but if our body language is saying something else, it can really throw things off.
Totally. And here's a final tip that people often forget. Don't be afraid to share about yourself. Small talk is a two-way street. It's great to listen and show interest, but sharing your own experiences and thoughts helps create that back and forth. It builds rapport.
That's such a good point. That makes the conversation more balanced and engaging when both people feel like they can contribute. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into small talk, from busting myths to practical tips for navigating all sorts of social situations.
And I hope what you take away from this is that small talk, while sometimes seen as superficial, can actually open the door to deeper, more meaningful conversations. It's about recognizing the potential in those everyday interactions.
Like you said before, small talk is the foundation for building connections.
Exactly. And if you go into those interactions with intention, with curiosity, with a real desire to connect, you might be surprised where those conversations lead.
So instead of dreading small talk, let's think of it as a chance to discover something new and make a connection.
I love that. You never know who you'll meet or what you'll learn from just, well, a simple conversation.
This has been so insightful, and I honestly feel ready to go out and use these strategies.
Remember, mastering small talk is a journey, not a destination. Be patient with yourself, keep practicing, and, most importantly, have fun with it.
And maybe next time you find yourself making small talk, you'll realize it's not so small after all. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep connecting.